right now that we are going live. Does it say live on your end?
It does.
Woohoo!
Are you recording?
I am recording. That is the thing that I am doing. So we can say hi to everybody and welcome. And please feel free to let us know that you're here and where you're from. And we would love to get a sense of what you're working on your project, where you are in the project, so we can speak to kind of the specifics of what you're doing. And I'll introduce myself and Dan in just a minute, but while you guys are populating the room and coming in and saying hello, I'll just give a quick sense of what we're going to do today, because it's so easy. We're just going to answer your questions, but that means you have to give us questions. So please feel free in the chat to they can be general, they can be specific, they can be philosophical, they can be about Pokemon. Those are questions I will not be answering, but get us your questions. That's what we're gonna do. We have about 50 minutes, and we'll just answer everything that you guys throw out. And if you don't give us questions, we'll make some up.
Yeah, but if you don't give us questions, it's all Pokemon. Okay, that's the punishment.
That would be really awesome. I'll just ask you questions about Pokemon.
There we go.
I know. One question I have about Pokemon, it seems like in my neighborhood in the early days, I live right next to a sweet little park that I think is very, there's a lot of Pokemon who live there. And in the beginning, there were lots of little kids running around and doing it. And now there aren't. Now it's all adults. So is it like Facebook, where it started out with the young folk and then the old folk took over and the young folk went somewhere else? That's the question I have.
I feel like the sweet spot is sort of the 20-somethings, and then you have on both sides of the bell curve from there.
Interesting. So we don't know what happened with that trend. Well, we have somebody who has bravely posed a question. So I'm gonna introduce us so that we can start answering those. So hi, I'm Jenny Nash. I'm a book coach, and I am the founder and chief creative officer of Author Accelerator, which is an online program that pairs book coaches with writers. The goal is so that you can actually finish your book and finish strong. And Dan is my friend, and he runs a program at wegrowmedia.com, a lot of programs to help authors find their audience, and all creative people, in fact, find their audience. And he does that on an individual basis like me, and he does it in mastermind groups. And Dan and I, very aligned in our philosophies. And in a perfect world, we always say that people would start their books and think about marketing right from the very start. I work with writers right from the very start, and it's always my wish that they would do that. And if there are people that do that, I would send them to Dan. So that's how we know each other and how we're aligned. And we're not selling anything today, like actually at all in any way, shape or form. We're really just here to chat. So there will be no sales pitch or anything. We're just here to answer questions. So thanks for joining us. And do you want to add anything to that, Dan?
No, I think you covered it pretty well. We can get into the meat of it.
Yeah. Okay, so Jack asks, what is the fastest way to find mid-tier successful authors in my genre? And he mentions Goodreads. How do I do that? So we can talk about that in general, Jack, but it'd be great for specifics if you could let us know what your genre is. And if you are talking about a first book, I'm assuming. But Dan, you want to take that and run with it?
Yeah, totally.
Okay.
So I want to back up half a step to just talk about the value of this. This is something I talk a lot about, is this idea of having aspirational mentors. These are people that we look up to. They are maybe the luminaries in the genre topic you write. But then I talk about the mid-level doers. And these are the people who are much like you. Maybe they're exactly like you, or they're a few steps ahead of you. And what I find is that you can learn a lot, not just by reading all these articles of what to do, but just observing what people actually do. This is something that you should notice whenever you're going to something about how to market, how to sell. Don't necessarily listen to what they're telling you to do. Listen and watch what they are doing to you. because that's how they are marketing and selling. So when you're an author and you're looking at a mid-tier author in your genre, you're looking to do is learn from them. You might be actually developing colleagues, which is a wonderfully fulfilling way to be a professional author, to have colleagues. You also want to get a sense of what are other people doing so I know if I'm normal or not. A lot of authors individually have a lot of different philosophies about what their headshot should be, and what their bio should be, and what their cover should be. And I think one thing we want to do is get a sense of what are other people doing so that I can kind of have some context for that. So in terms of finding these people, I think that Goodreads and Amazon are amazing resources, because all that they are these magical engines to show you stuff that's similar to what you like already. So if I go online to buy my wife a birthday present, which it's not her birthday now, but if I type in red boots, for the next week of my life, all that Amazon will do, not just on Amazon.com, but on ads I see on Facebook, on emails, is show me all kinds of red things and all kinds of boot things and things you buy with red boots and things that look good next to red boots and other things that she would want with her red boots. And it's the same thing with Goodreads. So the idea is that if you can start with even a big name author, what Goodreads will do is it'll show you customers like this also liked. It will show you customers like this also have these on their shelf. If you read through reviews, which I think is a wonderful thing to do, you'll start noticing who people mention. On Amazon especially, but they'll also have sub-genre bestseller lists. And these will change very often, but you start getting a tone of who are people who are doing well, who are people who are kind of shooting up because they're doing like a 99-cent campaign through some big e-blast. And you start seeing these other names. And every name you click on, you click into that book, and it shows you more similar books. So I do this kind of work with authors a lot, where we'll start with almost nothing, or we'll start with like the biggest name there is, like Douglas Adams, this sort of published 30, 40 years ago, long since has left us, unfortunately, legendary book almost. But from there, we can start getting to something that is published last year by an author who's up and coming, much like you. Was that specific enough?
Yeah, I think it was a great start. So just to take that a little further, Jack is saying that he's got 5 ebooks written, and it sounds like he might be launching them all at the same time, and he's looking for how to market to a broader audience beyond his newsletter readers. So first of all, we should say yay for you, Jack. That's awesome that you're already doing that. It puts you way ahead of a lot of people. A newsletter is a really great way to connect with people. And what Dan is suggesting is to start researching what other people who are connecting with your ideal readers are doing, and that hopefully that gave you some ideas. Maybe we should back up even more, Dan, and talk about what you and I both believe, which is, a mistake that a lot of writers make. I mean, when I say a lot, I mean like 99% of everybody is that they start thinking about marketing the day their book is published, basically. And they start blasting out things on social media, which you guys, I'm sure, see every day, which is like, here's my book. My book is here. I'm so excited. It's my book. Buy my book. Buy my book. And needless to say, that doesn't work at all. And what building a newsletter of followers does is gives you, an advanced path to drawing people into your universe and connecting with them in an authentic way before the book even appears. So I'm sure we could talk about that forever.
One thing I wanted to add on to was the idea of finding these other books is, I think that there's a level that a lot of people are getting at where they're collecting their own social following. And I think that when you have that top 10% of the most engaged, that's the most important, not the wide audience, the narrow, tiny little one that's highly engaged. I really do think it is critical for writers to develop colleagues, to identify these other authors and send them an email, to have a conversation with them, to find fun ways to promote them. I was reading an interview with David Letterman, really wonderful interview, and he was talking about back in his day, we had the late night wars. It was him versus Jay and everyone versus everyone. And he was bemoaning that there was so much waste. He really regrets that this is how he spent his time. And he's saying nowadays, these people are like buddies. It's like they're hosting each other's own shows. Like, and it's true, these sort of late night hosts, like, I don't know what their personal feelings are, but they're generally happy and generally joyful to that there's other competition out there. It's like a camaraderie. It's like when we talk about just even comedians, all of these comedians, a generation or two, talk about the 70s. Everyone went to each other's shows. Seinfeld met Larry David here, and Letterman was in the audience, and Gary Shandling's on the stage, and it was like this beautiful time. And that's what we're in right now for, or what we can be in for how you manage your careers, to find those other authors and befriend them and to support them.
Yeah, that's really excellent advice. And I know, Dan, you've counseled and coached a lot of writers through that type of collaborative work, and you've even done that. I love what you recently did with the being involved in the book festival or the storytelling festival in your own town and meeting people that way, and that it's a part that we often forget, that it's actual connections we're looking for, actual relationships that we're looking for, and that's what's going to help build your reader. There's a question that there's a couple really excellent questions. You guys are asking great questions, and I want to take the question that Judy asks. Thank you for this, Judy. Judy's talking about having been turned down by some agents and now thinking about self-publishing, and should I self-publish in order to get a regular publisher, and sort of what do I do? And the reason I want to tackle that question is not about the publishing part per se, but about what's underneath it, because I think that this is a question a lot of writers have, and it's based on a myth that a lot of writers have, which is that if you get a traditional publisher, all your problems will be solved, and they will market your book for you and find you a big audience, and your career will be made. And people oftentimes wrestle between the choice between traditional publishing, for which you have to have an agent, and self-publishing. And they wrestle with this because they think that the one path, the traditional publishing path, is going to have that sort of magic fairy dust associated with it. And the reason I want to bring this up, because I think it's applicable to everyone, is in the era in which we are living, writers have to market their own books. They have to connect with the readers. They have to have a plan for that. They have to have a stake in that. It has to be part of what they do. There's no choice. No matter how your book is going to be published, if you want readers, you have to be doing this work. Do you want to talk a little bit about that, Dan? Because it's that fundamental belief system that I think is important to break through.
Well, there's so much here to talk about with Judy's question. I mean, I'm almost relating back to what I'm doing right now with writing, in a way. When I kind of read Judy's question, what I think about are, what are your goals? And by goals, I don't mean milestones. I don't mean I want to be a bestseller. I want to be published by Random House. I want to be on a list. What I think about are how you want your days to look. The conversations you have, the work that you do, the emails you get, the feeling of fulfillment or dissatisfaction you have when you go to sleep at night. And I don't mean to get too flaky and too deep here, but this
yes,
is part.
You do.
but this is part of that question of the idea of getting an agent and getting a publisher. Sometimes we make these assumptions. I don't mean you, I mean even me, where we say, oh, if I do that, then I'm at that next level, and then I can potentially reach more people. In the end, and this goes back to the David Letterman thing a little bit, it comes down to the experiences you want to create and the effect you want to have on people. So I've gone back and forth like you have about this idea of, do I go traditional, get an agent? Because I love that path. I love publishers. I love editors. I love agents. I love everything about what they do. But I also think about, what is my goal and what am I trading by doing what you're talking about, which is, like, you've clearly been down this road for a while. And it's like, there's already a story and you're still at the midway point saying, I don't have what I want. I don't have an agent. I don't have a publisher. Do I then self-publish to try to go back and attract an agent, to attract a publisher? It's sort of like circling around the same thing of like getting a publisher. What I worry about is just circling and never saying, but my goal is here. My goal is to have these conversations. And instead, I'm so fixated on this one milestone that in the end is optional. Something that I've gone with just personally is, I had this goal of writing and publishing a book, and a big book, getting the agent, getting a really good publisher, and I want the experience of that. And what I found was that it was so complex and it required so much patience from me that with the other creative work I do, which is every day, it started to not feel like the right path. So what Jenny and I have talked a lot about was me just doing what I do well, which is crafting something really good and then using all of the drive and energy I have that permeates my everyday life and just self-publishing it. Of what is the quickest point between what I want to create and the experience I want to have. And it's never a simple answer, oh, self-publishing is better, traditional is better. They're both awesome. But I think you want to think about the goals and the experiences you want to create and help that kind of drive the answer.
Yeah, that's some excellent advice. You guys are asking so many good questions, and I have a plan for getting them to all of them, and I'm going to try to go in a way that makes the conversation a little cohesive. So if I'm skipping over yours, we will get to it. I promise. Did you want to?
I'm imagining you right now organizing questions. I Love Lucy with the little bonbons coming down the conveyor belt.
Totally. I am going to step into to talk about Ethan's question, which is also a really excellent one. And so Ethan's talking about, I'm trying to find the question there. He's publishing in installments, and his question is, how do I get to the part where I get paid? So he says, people love my work, the reviews are awesome, but I don't know how to ask them to buy. I think this is just a fantastic question, because a lot of what we do when Dan and I talk about connecting with your audience and making authentic connections with people, we're talking about not selling, not out there, with the neon sign saying, buy my book, buy my book, buy my book. And a lot of that work does involve giving things away. It involves giving away your energy. It involves giving away your work. It might involve giving away your time. It might involve giving away the actual writing. We could talk forever about making a book free, making an ebook free, making it free for a period of time, all of these questions. But at the end of the day, your goal is, in fact, to have people buy your work. So I think it's really interesting to talk about that. At what point do you, stop giving, if you will? I don't think you ever do, but and start asking for those things. And it might, I want to expand the question to not just be ask them to buy your book, because that is, in fact, the ultimate goal. But what about asking them to download it, to share it, asking them to review it, asking them, to do other things? But just the general idea about asking versus giving. Do you want to take
Yeah,
that?
so much here. So first, I would recommend that you read the book, The Art of Asking by Amanda Palmer.
Such a good book. Yeah.
And it talks all about that distinction between creating art and creating experience and asking for help or asking for money. The two things I thought about were almost about tone, which is you can do the tone where you're now creating this incredible package that has a lot of value. And then what you're doing is doing what all marketers do, is the other book would be the book Influence by Robert Cialdini. And this is a different tone from that. This is the tone of creating exceptional value, of using time, of using all this sort of marketing tactics, which are not bad. They're just marketing tactics to create perceived value and an encouragement to act. The other is much more about this idea of the art of asking. So what I think about a lot is YouTubers. I'm obsessive about watching people on YouTube. And there's this whole other community with YouTube called Patreon, Patreon. What it is a subscription service. If I have a YouTube channel and I do videos every day about Pokemon, I can say, look, I get some ad revenue here, but if you like what I do, you want to support me, subscribe to Patreon. And every month you can subscribe for $5 a month, 15, 20, name your own number. And I can give all the rewards. I'll give like extra updates or private videos or photos or nothing. And what's amazing, and this is the kind of the love, you give, and you just say, look, I'm going to level with you. I'm not going to sell you. I'm not going to create perceived value. I'm not going to create a timer. I love doing this, and I am not rich. It's like, could you support me? Supporting, this is a phrase that Maria Popova uses with Brain Pickings, her blog. There's a little button or a little thing that says, I think it says support equals love or donate equals love. So she's just leveling, saying, if you like what I do, you want to show me that you care, help fund my life to do this. So I think that that is something you could do. You could kind of level with people. You could actually share more with them about the process. And you can kind of leverage. And I think the trick is asking. How do you ask? When do you ask? And how do you get over all of our social hangups about asking, which is what Amanda Palmer's book is all about.
Yeah, I would reiterate that. That book is just fantastic. And it gets at the root of the difficulty we have around asking. There's so many big things tied up in that. You know, have I written something of actual value? Does anybody care about what I have to say? You know, who am I to ask? All of those things. And questions around money. I mean, these are big, big questions. I think Dan gives some just stellar advice there to work on that piece of it.
One thing I want to add is I had lunch with a bunch of people I know in publishing yesterday. One works at a very big company, and they're creating these wonderful ebooks, and it's an organizational effort. And ebook market can be difficult from these topics. They're talking about it was $9.99, now it's discounted to $2.99, and they still can't really move as many as they want to. And I think that once you realize that, you start realizing that you as an individual can charge $10, $20, $40, I don't know what. Because it's not a matter of just, well, I'm not a big company, I can't charge much. You start realizing it's hard for everyone, and it kind of opens up the gates about what does finance mean, what does love mean, what does support mean, and what does the reality of that look like for you?
I would also, Ethan, urge you to look at the blog Zen Habits, and it's not, I always get it wrong, it's not zenhabits.com or .org. I think it's zenhabits.net, and it's Leo Babauta. And he did something that I think is fascinating, and he did it brilliantly. He has 2,000 followers of his blog, and it's Zen Habits. And what he did is he gives away an enormous amount of free information. It's just a massive amount of wonderful content. And then he packages that content and sells it. And he says on the page where he does that, you can get all this content for free. You could look at the table of contents for this ebook that I'm offering you, and you could enter all of those titles in this blog and come up with each one of these posts and have this content, or I've packaged it for you, and it's 25 posts or 50 posts or whatever it is about whatever topic, and it's $9.99. And he makes his living on those offerings. So everything's free, but then in order to make it, it's like what Dan was saying, he's making it efficient and accessible and a pleasant way to consume that information. And you're going to pay $10 for that. Somebody else who does that is Chuck Wendig, who writes a blog called Terrible Minds. Are you familiar with his work, Dan?
Yeah, I follow him obsessively. He's awesome.
I mean, he's crazy, and what am I writing? He's
crazy in a good way.
Oh, in such a good way. I'm obsessed about him as well. Talk about voice. This guy has such voice. And he writes he does a lot of blog posts in a similar format. It's like 25 things you should know about whatever. And they're these bullet points things, and he pounds them out, and they sound silly. They're not silly. They're fantastic posts. But then he's got books on his site. I mean, a lot of them now where he packages this information in a different way in these books, and same deal. They're like $12 or $15 for a book, and you can get an actual physical printed copy, which is a different way of consuming the information that he's giving away for free. So you might just look, Ethan, at some people who have made the same move that you want to do, and see what they've done.
He had a follow-up, though. Can I kind of read the follow-up?
Definitely.
He talks about essentially content strategy of saying what to send out an email, sharing the process, send with testimonial, sneak peek. He's going to level with them, as we said. Then he'll put the price for a limited time. Would that work? So I would say this is the basics. That sounds like a good communication plan. It sounds like you've got this right tone. You've got the right deal. What I always think of this as how I like to throw parties. When I used to throw a lot of parties. I'm old now. I don't throw parties. But I would always do it with a friend. Everything is easier when you do it with a friend. This conversation is easy because I'm here with Jenny. So I'd hold a party with a friend because no matter what, I knew that he would show up, and then his roommate would show up, and then his roommate's buddy would show up. So right away, if no one else shows up, we got 4 awesome people. Then we have 4 people who are inviting all their friends. Then we have 4 people having crazy ideas, or one that says, I'm going to DJ. The other says, I'm going to handle the bar. The other says, I'm doing decoration. The other says, oh, I'm part of this group. I'm going to invite them. Can we do that? And suddenly, it's not just you sending out an email that is not bad, but transparent. You're in a sales process. It's more a little bit like this. It's a conversation. It is something where people are supporting you. They're giving you ideas. They're maybe inviting people in. And it becomes an experience in and of itself, not just about, did anyone buy? It becomes something more creative. And I think something that feels better.
Yeah, I agree. And I sent something, I mean, it's a little hard because we're talking in an internet chat box and we don't, hear your tone or know the nuances, Ethan, of what you're saying. But I do sense something in you about, I'll make it only 99 cents, which is like the lowest possible thing I could make to ask them. And I'll put a clock on it because that's what people do to create urgency. There's a sense about what you're doing that feels to me, I mean, for lack of a better word, sort of, I don't mean this in a bad way, but stingy. It feels a little like tight and stingy and oh, I'm just gonna try this. And I think what Dan is suggesting, the party metaphor, is really apt because I would think about changing your mindset a little bit and doing this. You could be doing exactly the same thing, but do it in a way that's more fun, that's more open, that's inviting people in. That's Dan suggested doing it with people to other people to make it have that spirit, but a spirit of giving and of inviting people and of like, we're going to do something really wonderful. And maybe as part of that 99 cents limited time offer, you give some super awesome thing. Maybe you do exactly what Dan and I are doing right now. Like, I'm going to host a free thing and answer all your questions about I think your topic is finance, I believe, or a live Facebook chat, or some fun thing to put some energy into it. I don't know if that resonates with you, or maybe he already hung up and said now she's
no,
like,
he's here. He loves it. But I have to add something to this if I can. Are you still on a riff?
I'm so done. No, I'm sorry. I'm so done.
No. This is a big topic, and I want to make sure we cover it because I think it aligns to a lot of people's questions. So I'm thinking of, one, don't charge as little as you can. Charge as much as you can. If you sell it for 99 cents, you have to sell 20 times the amount to get to $20. Why can't you sell this for $10 or $15 or $20 if it's your core audience? If this is your newsletter list and people love you, why aren't they the people spending $20 on the book instead of spending $1 on it? And then I think about, how do we create something bigger than that? So I don't know why I was thinking of this favorite band right now. They're named Tycho, Tycho. Love them. It's one guy makes the music. There's a band of 3 other people he has. They do live. And I follow them obsessively on Facebook and all that. And I haven't seen this. I don't think they have a Patreon or anything like that, because he builds up to the album. The album just came out. The album's already on Spotify. So I already get the album for free. He does live shows, but I don't really go to live shows. Again, I'm old. So it's this type of thing where I wish he would do a $20 a month Patreon where he'd have a chat once a month, or share a little snippet of a brand new track, or just do a live DJ set, which he does at shows. Do a DJ set for your Patreon followers. Because I would love to give him $20 a month. But the transaction of like, let me buy the album that I already have. Why am I doing that? Let me buy a ticket to a show that I can't go to. Like, I don't know how to support him because he's in this kind of old paradigm of you buy an album, you buy a concert ticket. And if you look at his followers, they're like me. We're following him on Facebook. We're watching, we'll do a little live stream, him previewing an album. We are clicking little hearts on it on Facebook. Give us a way to support you.
Yeah, that's excellent. So, Ethan, if in fact you're still here, please let us know if we're saying anything that resonates, or if you have any more ideas about that 99 cent program. And I want to pick up a question from Morgan that follows a little bit on all of this. Morgan asks, he connects with a lot of writers and readers on Twitter and Pinterest. He says opinion, which I think by which he's asking, do we think that's good? And then he says, what about guest blogging? So I mean, we could talk about this all day. Do you want to start?
Where is he engaging with people online?
Twitter and Pinterest. I mean, so the first thing I can start, and you can pick up on this, Dan, the first thing to say, Morgan, is it doesn't matter where you engage with people. There is no right social media channel. There's no right face-to-face channel. There's no right anything channel. There's no best practices. There's nothing that we could say, yes, that's perfect. What's perfect is what if you love it. If your audience is there, you like being in that medium, that's the right place, to be. I happen to love Twitter. I'm a giant Twitter fan. Some people hate Twitter. They can't stand it. Same thing with Pinterest. And there's some audiences that are just hugely on Pinterest and others that aren't. You might have different place you engage with different sections of your audience. There's not a one size fit all thing. So before we talk about the guest blogging part, do you want to talk about that part, Dan?
Totally. So this strikes me as it's all good, but it is best practices. What I think the opportunity is you doubling down, you taking this further than anyone else would. Jenny mentioned Chuck Wendig before, and what Chuck does is what all successful people do. He takes one thing that everyone's doing and he just does it to an insane level. I don't know how, he writes long. So he writes hundreds of thousands of words a year on his blog. And he processes things very quickly. So if there's an issue going on in the book world, or he can process it and be tweeting about it almost as it happens. I can't even process things as quickly as he's writing about it. So he sort of doubles down on it. And I think if you're trying to connect with other writers or readers and it's Pinterest or whatever, how can you just make it so much deeper than anyone else can do? What can you do that's beyond the minimum or the best practice? So great, you follow people and you tweet at them every now and again. That's awesome. What can you do that is more than that no one else would do because they feel like, well, I don't know. I mean, that seems like a little excessive, right? I think the excessiveness is what makes someone special when we're kind of creating these relationships.
No, totally. It's so true. I'm going to share something that may sound like bragging, but it's actually, I think it's actually instructive. So I got an email yesterday from a woman who follows my work and who I've worked with in the past. And she said, oh my gosh, somebody mentioned you on Instagram. I follow this person on Instagram and they mentioned how awesome you were and how you helped them. And it was so fun to see your name out there. And she sent me an email to that effect. And it was like so sweet. So I wrote her back and I'm like, that's awesome. I'm so glad that I was out there, and I didn't know I'd been mentioned on Instagram. So I looked at it and I, tweeted about that and liked it and all that. And it was really sweet. Well, this morning I got an email from the same writer, and Dan, it was really cool. I haven't told Dan this, so I'm telling Dan this at the moment. She said, I follow Dan blank, and he wrote about you today too. And he said, it's so weird. It's like it's Jenny Nash week, and the universe is talking about Jenny Nash everywhere, and they're all saying these nice things, and that's so awesome. So I wrote her back, and I thought it was hilarious. And so I said, yeah, I'm orchestrating all that, right? I'm like, I've got the puppet strings and I orchestrated all that. And then I said, that's all just totally accidental, but how great that you felt like I was everywhere this week. But the thing I want to mention is that what she wrote back was so instructive and so beautiful and exactly what we're getting at, because she said, it's not accidental and it's not lucky. You work so hard and so obsessively, and you're always giving. And I see that, and I notice that, and all of this is a result of that. Keep up the good work. You've got fans. And I just sort of stopped and I read that, and I thought, first of all, there could be no more lovely thing for someone to say, that they acknowledge the work that I'm doing and the energy that I put out there, and that, it's not, do you see the difference between that and like, buy my program, buy my class, buy my book, buy my whatever. It's like I'm authentically engaging with people, and that's the kind of response that you get. And I don't know, do you get what I'm saying, or did that sound just braggy?
No, I love that. I think it underscores a lot of, you and I talk a lot, and I've been lucky. I've been doing this for 6 years. So it's nice to know a lot of people who are on their own doing this. Yesterday I had coffee with 2 people who like us have our own little company, I think that there's something that it's harder than it looks in terms of it takes a lot longer. It takes a lot more giving. I think a lot of people think if I give away this ebook, I'm being generous. And I've heard generosity is key to marketing. And the reality is you've got to be generous like 1,000 times. So that sounds like the negative, but the positive is what you're saying, which is you have developed a body of work that you can be proud of. And you've developed, because of each little interaction, you've developed this fan base. And even with me, it's like me writing about you today was actually me feeling ludicrously guilty because I'm like, how have I not done a post like this about Jenny? It's insane. Because I'm always telling people how awesome you are. And I don't think I put in a post, and I'm like, oh my, this is like, if something is overdue, it's this. So I think it's part of that. It's the other side of that hard work.
Yeah, it's all good. So I want to follow up on the second part of Morgan's question, and we'll get to all the other questions. Fear not. And Ethan, you're not being annoying. It's fine to ask a lot of questions.
Wait. He calls his audience the Fellowship of Ethan. I just had to say that. That's pretty awesome.
That is awesome. Okay, so the second part of Morgan's question is about guest blogging, and we could also talk forever about this. I am a massive fan of guest blogging, and it is a tactic. So before Dan was talking about strategies. So strategies would be connecting with people that are serving the same audience as you are, aligning with people who have the same philosophy, forming actual authentic connections with actual individuals, palling together with people so that you can reach their audience. He was talking about that strategy. There's a lot of ways you could execute that strategy. One such way, a tactic you could do is to guest blog. It's a tool in that toolbox, if you will. And I happen to love it. I happen to do it quite a lot. I spend a lot of time. I've started to actually track it because it's become a bit of a problem. But I spend a significant percentage of my time writing stuff for free for other people. And, part of me sometimes think, why am I doing this? What is the point of this? This is a stupid waste of my time. But then I get so much from that. And it's not just the one blast from the one guest post that goes out to somebody else's followers. That's obviously great. But I could talk forever about this. I use my guest blogs at other people's sites to build work that I want to build. I do it to test material I want to test. I do it to check out audiences to see how I'm aligned with their audiences. And then what tends to happen is, a perfect example of this for me is with Angela Ackerman, who runs Writers Helping Writers, and she's the author of The Emotional Thesaurus and the books around that. She's out there working really hard to connect people with good material and to do all the things Dan and I are talking about. And I guest blogged for her years ago for the first time, maybe 3 years ago. And we have built this relationship slowly over time through Twitter. She tweets my stuff all the time. I tweet her stuff. We have this sweet Twitter relationship. And I guest blog for her. And in the last 6 months or so, the things that we've done together have deepened and grown and rippled out. She recently asked me to be part of an initiative she's doing in 2017 to be a permanent guest blogger, or like a year-long guest blogger. She asked 6 or 7 people to do this, and I was very honored that she asked me. And we're now in a position where we can ask each other for some big things. If I were doing a big thing and I needed a big help, I could ask her. She has a big audience, and that's not why we do it. We genuinely like each other. We genuinely enjoy each other. We genuinely help each other. There's been a lot of giving. I'm talking about like 3 years of giving. And it's not like, oh, now it's paying off. It's like, this is just how I am in the world. It's how she is in the world. It's a fantastic thing. And when I do something now with Angela, like a big thing, I watch the number of my followers just leap ahead. I watch the engagement increase. It's just a win-win-win. And this is again, it's just a tactic to execute a strategy, the guest blogging, but fantastically useful for a lot of people. I'm sure you could talk about this forever too, Dan.
Yeah, so I'll just hit upon 2 points. I mean, I would say, and this is what you're saying, is don't think of it as transactional. I think too many people say, if I get on that big blog and do this post, then this will happen immediately. It really is more a process of, as you're saying, experimenting and getting exposure, but building trust with the person. And that takes time. Something I linked to my post today was I'm now doing a monthly podcasty thing with Orna Ross, which she just kind of invited me into. And I kind of resisted it because it felt like more work, but it's been lovely. It's been awesome. And that's just—
Do you want to say who she is? Because she's cool.
Well, look her up, or I'll look it up on my blog today, We Grow Media, because I know we've got a lot of questions.
Okay.
It's this kind of thing where we've just kind of emailed for years, and she just found a slot for me. This very webinar is very much about us just talking and having that. I have a monthly guest blog post in Writer Unboxed that I've had for years. And that's been amazing because it's a different audience. I write differently to that audience. And one neat little outcome that came of that is they have a book coming out in November from Writer's Digest books. And I have a chapter in there because of that. And it's like, so I would just make sure you don't think of it as transactional. I talked to a lot of authors say, we'll do a blog tour, we'll guest blog. And they think of it as PR. We will have all these things all at once. What you find out when you start reaching out to bloggers in that way is that these bloggers are inundated. They're all different. They all want something different. And the main thing is they have no trust yet. Now, if you're a big name and you're offering them something, you'll get a reaction really quickly. But if you're like most of us and you're just sort of like middle-level nobodies, it's a matter of that trust really matters. It's also why both of us encourage you to develop these colleagues as early as you can.
Right. Why don't we answer Jack's question? He says, it sounds like all this is about nonfiction. What about people writing fiction? I know you do a lot of work with writers who do these kind of strategies and tactics with fiction. Do you want to talk about that, Dan?
Yeah, I almost obsess about fiction, not because I focus on it more, but because it's so much more difficult. So it's much easier to do this with nonfiction. You're writing an organic gardening book, you go to the organic gardening blog. Memoir is amazing because it's kind of like, you're kind of like writing fiction because it's a story, but it's also based on things. So it's, the harrowing story of how I conquered cancer. And so there's nonfiction elements to it, but it's also told like a story. Fiction is different because people don't go into Google and type in underdog character, 1920s Boston. Like, they don't do that. They don't kind of do keywords to find a certain kind of a novel. But I do find these things really matter. I mean, I don't want to talk too much about this, but it is enormous case study with Miranda Beverly Whittemore about publishing her novel. And we shared 130 blog posts this topic. We've written about it a lot. But it was very much about some of these same things. It was the idea of developing colleagues, of having other writers, of understanding who cares about the kind of literary fiction that she was writing about. And a lot of our strategy really was about generosity in relationships. I'll only talk about this for 15 seconds, but when we got to that point of doing a giveaway, instead of doing that spammy giveaway, we instead said, let's be generous. Let's promote the books of 25 other people who are publishing books in the same month you are. And she walked away with that with so many friends. The thing did really well because it talked about her that much. She was hosting it, but it just created something lovely. And to this day, she has super duper close friendships because of that. And I think that's just amazing.
Yeah, definitely. I would urge you guys, Dan doesn't like to talk about it because he's so modest, but his series on what he did with Miranda Beverly Whittemore is extraordinary. You should go to his site and look it up if you want to know how to do this work with fiction. Let's answer, I know we have a limited time with Dan. I think I can stay a couple more minutes, but I want Dan to answer the question from Rebecca, a historical romance writer who's got a 3-book series with a traditional publisher. And her publisher is going to offer book number 1 for free for a month to spur sales. And she's worried, will this devalue my work, or is it very generous? And then what can I do to make this even more successful?
So I always think about, like, what would not devalue it? $1, $4, $10? All of those numbers are pathetic compared to the amount of work that you've put into this. This is the funny thing about book publishing is it took you 2 years to write the book. It'll take someone 7 hours to read the book. And we're charging even like a full cover price, like $25 or something like that. And people don't even pay that anymore. I don't get a sense that it devalues the book, because I think what they're trying to do is think, what can we do to remove the barriers to this? So clearly what they're saying is, what if we remove transaction entirely? What if we move the idea you've got to have an account and a credit card, you've got to, even, there's a great quote, I don't know who I heard this from originally, but it's basically, what is the highest price for something in the world? $1. Because to get anyone to pay for anything, to get out their credit card to say, I want this enough, it's so difficult. The difference between getting them to do $1 is like massive, to pay $1. To go from $1 to $4, tiny, tiny. It's like $3 more. If they're already doing all that work, oh, I want this, it's valuable, I'm gonna take out my credit card, I'm gonna make time to read it, that $3 is not the difference. So it sounds like they're trying to remove that barrier. So to me, I don't think it devalues the work. And again, it goes back to what I was saying earlier to Judy, was the idea of, if you know what your goals are, if you want this story to reach people, if you're doing that, that's what matters. And when you're clear about that, I think it helps alleviate some of these questions about money.
And Rebecca, I just want to add in that strategy is, especially with the whole series, if you've got book 2 and 3, is proven very successful strategy. That's one of the huge benefits of having a series, is the ability to do that, to bring people in at 0 for book 1 and hook them, and then they're going to buy books 2 and 3. It's very smart, and it's done a lot. I don't know if you're doing it through a BookBub program, or however they're doing it, but it's good stuff. So what can you do to make it more successful? I mean, there's so many things you can do. There's a lot of websites that actually amplify free book giveaways. If you search for them, you can get a spreadsheet of a bunch of different sites and try to submit your work to be part of those blasts. You could, depending on what social media you're on, you could do some things around that giveaway. Maybe you could do some special events for people around that, live chats, Facebook things, tweets, contests. It's the sky's the limit. What Dan and I were talking about before is, be generous, think big, have fun, pal up with people, do fun things. And to even loop in the question about fiction, look for some places to guest blog. There's so many ways to use material from your fiction to, in the same way Dan talked about, organic gardening. You might be writing about dragons. Well, guess what? There's tons of blogs about that. There's tons of blogs about historical time periods. There, fashion blogs about that time period, whatever it might be, just to think really creatively about how to just amplify what's being done in a fun, generous, giving, authentic way. So what else? Okay, Dan, you have time for like one more short question. I think we should go with Tammy, who asked about children's books, and her audience, I believe she said, is 13-ish, and you can't connect with them directly on social media. So she asks about what any tips on how children's writers can use social media in an effective but legal and not creepy way.
Yeah, so I've got a couple clients who are young adult or middle grade, and this is what we obsess about. So one client, where it's funny, we actually had, we talked, we strategized for a while, built the kind of foundations, and I'm like, I have this talk with you. So and then the talk is basically like, we're ignoring your actual audience, right? Which was trying to appeal directly to like 5th graders. And we're sort of like, well, yeah, to a certain degree. So what we think about with that is, one of, like you said, being aware of not just legal ramifications, but also, how do these kids live and how do they find out about books? So what we've done with her is obsessed about finding out this answer. What I tend to find, and I say this phrase a lot, but with her it really applied, which is, nobody's doing the proper research. No one's finding out, how do kids get turned onto books? Or they're kind of leaning very heavily on some staid ism. So I've had her go out and talk to librarian after librarian. I've had her go out and talk to bookseller after bookseller. She's lucky enough to have some kids who are middle grade. So she, of her own accord, has gone in and done programs with the kids. She has had little book clubs and writing clubs. She had them beta read her book. She's a genius too. But it's this kind of idea where she's finding out, what is the voice of the child, of the kid, in terms of what they like in books. And then what we're really focusing on is developing her network with other writers. This is a new genre for her. Who are these people? How do you kind of align with them? Obviously, all the writing groups like SCBWI, booksellers, librarians, and her book doesn't come out for a while because, again, a lot of people work with me well ahead of the book coming out. She already has people saying to her without her prompting, let me know when your book comes out. We can definitely do something for our library or something like that, which is like what you want to hear 6 months ahead of your book coming out. So I would really think about who are the people who are influential in those decisions of buying books: parents, librarians, teachers, booksellers, that sort of thing. I think too often people lump in social media as like a solution. Social media is like this. It's a channel. It's like a phone or like email or like a webinar. A webinar is not a thing. But Jenny and I saying, let's do a Q&A on this topic, it'll be fun, that is a thing. So that's kind of my advice on that.
Awesome. So we've got a question from Anne and Susan and Jack, which I can answer all by my own self. So I will do that so we get everybody's questions answered. But I know Dan has to jump. So I just want to thank you for being here, Dan, and for your wisdom and sharing it. It's always fun to have you, and you're so smart and awesome. And thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for your great questions. Thank you, Jenny, for having me.
Of course.
See you all soon.
Of course.
Bye.
Happy Pokemon hunting.
Thanks. Bye.
Okay, bye. Okay, so I'm going to answer Susan's question. The reason, just so you guys know, I saved your questions for not Dan because some of them are really straight publishing, and if people need to go, if they came for marketing and they need to go, they can do that. All of this touches on marketing for sure. But so Jack asked about is it a thing to self-publish with the intention of being discovered by a traditional publisher? That is a path that some people take. It is a strategy that some people employ. That being said, it takes a lot of effort to self-publish well. You still have to do all the platform building, all the audience connecting, all of the work of getting that book out there. And to do it very well, by the time you do it very well, you may well not want a traditional publisher, because at that point, you've done all the work, you're making the money, and bringing in a publisher means giving up some creative control, giving up a lot of money. You do that at a certain point, depending, it's a cost benefit analysis for sure. There is a path to doing that. What's interesting is that at certain high levels, why some writers go with a traditional deal versus staying with self-publishing, it just has a lot to do with the trajectory of their career. So it is a thing that you can do. You have to, in order to do it, you have to do very well with self-publishing. You can't just sort of throw a book up there and then say, hey, I self-published this book, I want a traditional deal. You've got to do well. So everything rests on doing well with the self-publishing, both the success intrinsic to that act, and then also if you want to be noticed or picked up. There are agents and traditional publishing house editors who look to self-published writers as a source of authors that they might sign. So, it does happen. So I don't know if that answers the question, Jack. Please let me know if I did. Susan asks about how much time or number of query rejections should I give before I consider that my book needs further revision. So this is a question that I deal with every day because part of what I specialize in is helping writers land agents. And a lot of what I do is helping writers when they have been in the situation you're talking about, where they've got a number of rejections and they're trying to figure out what to do. I often help in that situation. So generally the advice that I give my clients is when we are ready to pitch, and by that I mean if it's fiction, a beautiful, polished, perfect, ready-to-go manuscript. For nonfiction, it's going to be a very intense and bulletproof book proposal, and usually 3 sample chapters. When we're ready to query, I usually say, let's assume that we're going to try 50 agents before we give up this fight. That doesn't mean that we stop at 50. My client, Sam Polk, whose book, For the Love of Money, came out from Simon & Schuster a few months ago, For the Love of Money, he queried 82 agents. You hear these stories, of course, all the time of people who, this pitched and pitched and pitched until they found the right person. So 50 is just an arbitrary number. That being said, it depends in very large part on the kinds of rejections you're getting. If you're getting either no answers or straight, flat form letter rejections, that's a sign to me that something's wrong with your query and your pitch. And I would stop pitching at that point. Even after less than 10, if you get those kinds of responses, to me, that means something's not right. And I would reassess and figure that out before I just continue blindly pitching. So the 50 is not just a 50 blanket blind pitches. I usually suggest a strategy of rolling in waves so that you can understand the feedback you're getting, and all feedback is feedback. Even flat rejection form letters are tell me something. So it's a strategic process about how you pitch and when you pitch and when you give up. I worked with a writer last year who, well, I've been working with her for 2 years, but after a year, she had a novel manuscript ready to go out. We got the pitches ready, the strategy ready. We went out and she immediately got 5 rejections that were all the same. They said exactly the same thing. They love this, 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 and this, but this one thing was bugging them, and gee, they wish she would fix that. She made a decision to stop pitching and realized it was not her pitch or her query. It was something intrinsic in the manuscript. And she spent a year with me revising that manuscript. And just a few weeks ago, she went out with her pitches and got a bunch of interest and landed a great agent. So you really just have to weigh what they're saying and what's happening. So I don't know if you want to give me any more detailed information about the kind of rejections you're getting, Susan, but that would be my advice, is depends on the feedback you're getting. Thanks for joining us, Barbara, and we'll talk with you later. Okay, the question that Anne has about her mom's memoir, and you want to know about publishing the memoir. So Anne, the question there is kind of similar to what Dan was saying about your goals. If your goal is just to publish the memoir of your mom's for your family so that you can share with everyone, so that you can hold it in your hands. Maybe, you want to give it to family for the holidays. If that's your goal, and you don't know anything about self-publishing, and you don't want to learn, and you don't want to, have this take up a ton of time, I would recommend one of the companies that are sort of the turnkey places that would help you self-publish. So that would be a place like BookBaby or Lulu, or I'm like blanking on all the places that I normally recommend. Yikes. Well, those are 2 that you can start with to see what they do, but they will walk you through the process, get books in your hand, and it's relatively affordable. At every stage, they're going to ask you for much, they're going to upsell you, for the cover and for this and for that. So She Writes is more of a hybrid publisher. The BookBaby and Lulu are straight vendors that help you publish. You can publish anything you want. There's no vetting. There's no barrier to entry in any way. She Writes does have a vetting process where they only want to publish people that meet a certain quality level, and there's sort of some hurdles you have to jump over for that. It's a fantastic setup. Brooke Warner, who runs She Writes Press, is a friend of mine and actually a friend of Dan's, and she's amazing, and they are doing this with a lot of integrity and awesomeness. And there's some hybrid publishers that aren't. You have to be a little bit careful of them. But She Writes is amazing. But I don't think that's what Anne is looking for. You can Okay, so I hope I answered Anne's question. Please let me know if I did. Annette is saying, do I recommend Facebook advertising for a novel, or is BookBub or Reddit better? Wow, well, those are three really different things. So, well, first of all, BookBub, full disclosure, my daughter works there. I know a lot about how they work and how awesome it is. And it's an amazing thing for writers to be able to get into one of their campaigns. You do have to be chosen. There's a vetting process, and you have to have certain criteria, a certain number of reviews on Amazon of a certain level, some different things like that. If you can get a BookBub campaign, it's amazing. They also have recently started some advertising capabilities. Maybe that's what you're talking about for novelists. Also an excellent thing to try. Facebook advertising is super powerful and amazing and wonderful. I love it. I use it in my own business for Author Accelerator. From time to time, we will blast out some Facebook ads. You can select exactly the type of people you want to have your post appear on. Facebook changes the ad criteria all the time. You have to pay attention to that. There's like a certain number of words you can have on your ad and this, that, and the other thing, but I like it a lot. But again, these are all tactics you're talking about. You want to make sure you have a strategy, that what you're doing, why you're doing it. You don't want to just do one-off Facebook ads because you heard that works for somebody. You want to know that your audience is on Facebook, that they respond to Facebook ads, that you know exactly who you would target there and why, that you have a budget for it, that you select the ads that are going to work the right way. There's a lot of things that you want to do to be smart about that. So that hopefully answers your question. They all can be really great. Just depends on, again, what you sort of how you want to think about it. So that is the top of the hour. I can stay a couple more minutes if my fast answers at the end were not thorough enough or confused you guys or what have you. I'd be happy to answer them. And if you have more follow-up questions, I answer things in my blog all the time. And I know Dan answers as well. And we do these things from time to time. So you can just look for the next time we do it. Lorraine, I'm just seeing your note there, and I'm wondering, did we answer your question? I'm going back down. I see that we didn't. You said, I'm about to launch my website and blog. I'm on Facebook and Twitter. How do I increase my readership? I have one historical fiction book finished and another in progress. I want agents to see that I'm passionate about my work and serious about success. Yeah. So Lorraine, I would just say you're doing everything right and you want to double down on that. And one thing I would do is start compiling a list of your target agents. Make a spreadsheet of your top 25 or your top 30 or your top 50 agents and follow them on Twitter and start engaging with them on Twitter. That can be a really great way to learn about what they want and what they don't want and what works in order to pitch them and doesn't work to pitch them. It gets them looking at what you're doing and paying attention to that. It can be a really smart way to prepare before you pitch, and again, to do it in an authentic way, not just be, sort of randomly doing it, but, you're authentically interested in what they're doing. A lot of agents I've noticed have started to be very engaged on Facebook and Twitter, doing live events, doing chats, doing, all kinds of things. Like, take advantage of that and tap into what they're doing and be part of their fan base. And that when you then pitch to them in your query to them, you can authentically say, I follow you on Twitter and I love what you're doing with X, or I follow your blog, or I follow you on Facebook, or whatever it might be. Hopefully that helped answer your question, Lorraine. So last call on anybody wanting a follow-up on any of those questions. I will take those follow-up questions. I think I got to everyone's. Ethan asked a lot of questions as well. And Ethan, I would say just keep doing what you're doing. It sounds like it's great. It sounds like you're having fun with your audience and doing some things to engage with them. And I don't think any of it's weird at all. And I think it's all really good stuff. So I would say just keep doing what you're doing. Morgan is saying, I'm working on Lisa Cron and I speaking to your online critique group in December. Yeah, so what Morgan's talking about is Lisa Cron, who's the author of Wired for Story and Story Genius. She and I teach a workshop at Author Accelerator called Story Genius, and our members are invited to have us come speak to their writing groups or workshops, and talking about story, really nitty-gritty story stuff. And we are definitely working on scheduling those. Sometimes Lisa does them herself, sometimes I do them myself, sometimes we do them together. It sort of just depends on the timing and all of that, but we're totally happy to do that. We love doing that. It's really fun. Annette is saying, how can I find agents for a nonfiction book outside of the 8 I found through competitive books? Well, there's a whole long strategy to how to do that. I promised that I was not selling on this Q&A, but I do have a course on that. It's a pitch track. It's called the Pitch Track. It's at Author Accelerator, and it's a 6-week course that walks you through how to do that. We help you make a list of 25 agents, and there's steps and there's tactics and strategies, but it involves, I'm trying to think, how would I even tell you to start? Looking at Agent Query and Agent Tracker. Those are websites that are really great databases. Looking at Publisher's Lunch, which is another great database, and searching for, on keywords, searching for similar authors and genres. I would pay attention to Chuck Sambucino's column at Writer's Digest. He highlights new agents oftentimes who are looking for writers. I would look at who's going to writing conferences, because those are agents who are looking for writers. So there's a million things to do that I can't really take too long to go into now, but that's a big question, and getting a good agent pitch list is a really critical thing. So Ethan is saying, of course, yes, totally go do what you're doing, be yourself and be patient, and start learning how to ask people to come in and purchase what you've done. I think that's perfect. Glenda, what is the best way to find blogs in my nonfiction genre? Well, there's a lot of blog aggregators who list the top blogs. Mashable is one such place, and something called Alltop is a place. But you could just Google. I would Google top blogs in whatever the topic is. Organic gardening, we used that before. Top blogs in organic gardening, and start poking around. If there's somebody who gives awards for blogs, like Writer's Digest gives the award to writing blogs, look up who they said the best 100 blogs were in 2015. Find something in your topic, somebody who's giving those awards or giving that stamp of approval, and find those lists. That's what I would suggest. All right, so I'm going to have to stop taking the questions for now, but I love that you guys came and you asked fantastic questions, and it's always really fun just to do this. So thanks for joining us, and follow along my newsletter or Dan's newsletter for when we might do this next, or other things we might do. And I hope everybody has a great weekend. It's coming up here on Halloween, which is amazing. How did it get to be that time? I don't know. Rebecca, you're very welcome, and Glenda, you're welcome as well. I'm glad that it's useful. This is good, meaty stuff for every writer to dig into. We all have to think about it. So enjoy your weekend and your writing, and we will speak another time. Okay, bye-bye. Bye, Susan. Bye, Morgan.